my beautiful friends, my name is Anna. Welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're making a beautiful pasta recipe, a fall pasta recipe with acorn, squash, kale. We have a little bit of Italian sausage, and it's warm, it's comforting, but it's actually very light. It's not too heavy. So let's get right into it. You're going to need onion, garlic, some short pasta. I'm using bowl type pasta. You can use any pasta you have on hand, a little bit of wine, some mild Italian sausage. You can use sweet, you can use hot. I like the mild because I'm not like a super spicy person. Like I can't handle that much spice, so mild is perfect for me. But I like the mild instead of the sweet because the acorn squash can be kind of sweet. So we want to balance out the sweetness, and we don't want to add too much sweetness. But you can absolutely do that if you like. We have a little bit of sage, some beautiful kale. You're gonna need salt, pepper, and a little bit of Parmesan cheese, but that's in the fridge, so I'm gonna take that out in just a second. I have a high side skillet. You can use any skillet you have. I just prefer a high side one just because it's gonna hold the pasta much better. And I also have a pot with water that I'm going to salt very well, and I'm gonna start bringing that to a boil. But in the meantime, I just want to go ahead and chop my onion, mince my garlic, chop my squash into about like in 1-inch cubes. It doesn't have to be like too perfect because we are going to mash it, and that's what's going to create the sauce. That's why we don't need to add any cream, any butter, anything like that. Oh, you're also going to need a little bit of olive oil, but that's going to come in just a sec. While I'm doing this, I want to start on my Italian sausage because we want to brown it a little bit. So I'm going to turn on my skillet to medium heat, and then I am going to drizzle just the smallest amount of extra virgin olive oil, just a small little drizzle, about like a teaspoon. And I'm going to go ahead and add my Italian sausage. So I'm gonna add it right in. Now we're gonna let this brown, and I'm gonna go back and I'm going to finish my acorn squash. You can essentially use any type of squash you like. If you like butternut squash, you can add that in. I personally love acorn squash. I think it just has like a beautiful flavor. In my opinion, I might be wrong, it's not as sweet as a butternut squash. So I think it just works with the recipe perfectly. And as you can see, you want about cubes to about that size. So we're going to let our Italian sausage brown a little bit. And as you saw, I didn't really add any other spices to the recipe list just because Italian sausage, I can speak today. Italian sausage is pretty spiced already. It has fennel seeds, it has oregano, it has just like beautiful spices. So I feel like you really don't need to add any more to it except from some fresh sage. And I do like to add a little bit of parsley at the end, but that is optional. So I'm just gonna let this do its thing, and then I'm going to move on to the next step. My sausage looks fabulous. This is exactly what I want. As you can see, it has nice little golden bits, and that's gonna add so much flavor. So now I'm gonna transfer into the same bowl that I had. I know it's dirty, but don't worry because the sausage is gonna go back right into the pasta. So it doesn't matter if it goes back in the same bowl it was before. If your sausage didn't render too much fat, as you can see, mine didn't, you're going to add about another teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil, just a little bit. You want like a total of like a tablespoon of olive oil. And now I am going to add in my chopped onions. I'm gonna let this cook for just a sec. I'm going to add some sage leaves. And what I like to do, I just add them in whole. You can like mince them if you want and add them in. I like to kind of like squish them just so they can release their fragrance. And I kind of, actually I do give it a little bit of a chop with my hands. It's been about a minute and my onions look great. So now I am going to add in my squash. I'm also going to add in my garlic. I'm going to season it just with a pinch of salt, small little pinch, and a little bit of black pepper. I'm very careful when I season it with salt because the sausage already has salt. So we don't want, obviously, our pasta to be overly salty, but we do want to season every single layer. We are going to add about a cup of the boiling water, or the water that's coming to a boil. You're gonna add it right in. You can also use some chicken stock or vegetable stock if you want. And now we are going to cover this, and we're gonna let that acorn squash get nice and tender and soft, because again, that's what's gonna make the sauce. So I'm just gonna cover it and I'm gonna let it cook for about 20 minutes. My acorn squash looks amazing. It's been 15 minutes. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it takes less. You know that it's done because when you mash it with the back of your spoon, it just mashes perfectly. You can also add this into a blender with a little bit of more liquid, and you are going to get a very creamy sauce consistency. I personally just like to mash it, and I feel like it just all comes together so beautifully that there's no need to put it in a blender. Sometimes I use my hand blender, but today I'm feeling a little lazy. So I'm just going to go ahead and mash it with the back of my spatula. And I'm not gonna mash the whole thing because I do want little pieces of squash running through my pasta. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in my wine. I'm gonna bring my heat to medium. I had my heat on medium-low when I was cooking the squash. Now at this point, I just don't want to disturb the squash too much because they are very tender. My water came to a boil. I am going to go ahead and, like I said, add a generous pinch of salt. My goodness gracious, I cannot speak today. And I'm going to add in my pasta. It's gonna take about 12 minutes to cook. So I'm going to let it do that. I am going to just mix it with the back of my spatula so nothing sticks. And in the meantime, I'm going to add in my kale, but first I do want to give it a quick chop, just because I don't want these huge pieces of kale. So I am going to just remove them from the stem. So you want to pretty much grab the stem and just go down the leaves and remove that. And you're gonna need about 3 cups of kale. Written recipe can be found on my website, anitasdelightsrecipes.com. So this looks pretty good. So I'm just going to give it a rough chop. I don't want to cut it too small because then it's going to dissolve quite a lot in the sauce. So I'm going to introduce my sausage back into the skillet, and I am going to mix all of this together, again very gently because we don't want to break the little pieces of squash we have running around. Okay, and I'm also going to add in my washed chopped kale. You can also add spinach if you don't have kale, but I personally love kale. I feel like it doesn't wilt as much, so it just adds like very beautiful texture to our dish. And it is right in season, so it works perfectly. I'm actually just going to cover it for just a few minutes so our kale wilts a little bit more and it's easier to mix. So you can see after a few minutes the kale has pretty much completely wilted and it just blended into the sauce. So now it's time to add in our pasta because my pasta is ready. I did reserve about half a cup of the cooking water just so we can make the sauce just a little bit creamier. Now it's time to add as much parm as your heart desires, or you can do what I do and just follow the recipe, and it should be about half a cup of parm. I like to freshly grate some parm because I find that it blends easier into the sauce. And then we're gonna add our reserved water, and the starch in the cooking water is gonna help make the sauce like much creamier. So that's exactly what we want. And now we just kind of like blend. My pasta is like a minute shy of al dente, so I am gonna let it cook for about a minute. I do that on purpose because I do want the sauce to, I do want the pasta to absorb the sauce, and I want it to just like kind of like marry together. So I like to leave my pasta like a minute shy of al dente. And I'm also going to add in a little bit of parsley just to make it beautiful and to taste beautiful. And I am going to taste it for seasoning and see if it needs a little more salt. It's pretty perfect. Turn off my heat. I am going to serve myself a nice little bowl of pasta because I am starving and this is my lunch. Oops, I pretty much burned myself. So yummy. A little more parsley right on top, not so much. And then an extra shaving of parm. Now my favorite part, the taste test, even though I just already tried it and it tastes absolutely scrumptious, but we're gonna do it. And it's so loud in the background. I am so sorry about that. It's honestly fantastical. I feel like it's the perfect transitional pasta because I feel like it's still very hot, at least here in Miami. It's like literally 90 degrees outside. So I feel like it's very hot for me to start indulging into all the like warm fall things. So this is like very light. It's just kind of creamy, slightly spicy, slightly sweet from the acorn squash. It's just absolutely divine. Written recipe on my website, anitasdelights.com. There's nothing else to say. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.